Yeah, hi, Martin.
Hello, actually, my first name is Brian. My last name is Martin. I have two first
Okay.
names.
Hi, Wayne. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity to present you on my podcast.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine.
So I've gone through a profile. I can see you're doing great work. So I thought to tell about your work to my audience. So can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure. My name is Brian Martin, and I am a longtime lover of history and historical fiction. I studied history at the University of Texas at Austin, and then never actually used that education. I worked in the software industry for 35 years, and I recently retired. And in the last year, I've written my debut novel, which is a historical fiction entitled The Queen Among Kings.
So you are from?
I'm
You
sorry.
are from? You are from?
I am from originally Dallas, Texas. I've been living in Austin, Texas, USA, for the last 40 years. So, born and raised here, I have had the privilege of traveling around the world quite a bit, including Europe and Asia and South America. But uh, a lifelong Texan, born and raised.
So 35 years of being in software industry, now becoming an author and writing this. Can you tell the motivation and what motivated you to, to
well, well, as I mentioned, I'm a lifetime lover of history and historical fiction, and I never stopped studying and reading history after college. So I read these amazing stories, and was always telling my wife someday I was going to write a book. I've always liked to write, but I've never sat down and attempted it seriously. And after retiring in 2024, I had a lot of time on my hands. And my wife reminded me, she said, "You've been saying for years you're going to write a book someday." Well, it's someday. When are you going to get around to actually doing it? So I thought, well, you know what? She's right. And so that's when I decided to go ahead and start working on a book. And I actually, my original intent was to set out to write a book about King Edward III of England. His is a fascinating story. But as I was really getting into my research, the more I researched it, the more I realized I couldn't really tell his story without first telling his parents' story. And that's what became the book, The King of Queens.
So why this name, the King of Queens?
Actually, I said the Queen of Kings. I meant to say the Queen among Kings. Um, it's I'm I enjoy writing, and I can be pretty prolific at writing, but something I'm not good at is titles. And I was again talking to my wife. You'll probably hear me reference her a lot because she's much of my inspiration. I was telling her, I was like, I can't think of a name for this book, and she said, there are a lot of kings in this book. There's King Edward II. There's King Robert and Bruce of Scotland. There's the King of France, who's her brother, Charles. And the future King Edward III is talked about. She said, there's all these kings mentioned, but there's only one queen. Maybe you should come up with a title like, I don't know, The Queen Among Kings. And I thought, well, that's a great title. I'll use it. So that's where I came from.
So can you tell more about it to let my audience know about it?
About the book itself,
Yeah.
absolutely. First of all, I just happen to have a copy right here. This is my author's proof copy. Um, so The 14th century was a pretty turbulent time in the Middle Ages in Europe, um, and King Edward II was on the throne when at the beginning of the book, well, throughout the book, and he was, by all accounts, a nice man, but not a good king. He was not particularly talented when it came to the various aspects of kingship, and not really interested in most of those aspects of kingship. As a result of having a weak and ineffectual king, things went badly in the kingdom. And Scotland was fighting for their independence from England. There are various barons, the Earl of Lancaster and others, who were vying for power and influence. And so at the beginning of the book, it starts with the birth of Edward II and Isabella's first child, who goes on to become King Edward III later. So that's where the book begins, and there's all this turmoil happening, and so much of the book deals with that turmoil. There's a great deal of political infighting. There's a big battle when Scotland basically kind of wins their independence, the Battle of Bannockburn, in which Edward and the English are defeated terribly. The book goes on to, as events continue later in the book, Edward falls under the influence of an advisor named Hugh Despenser. And that was another fault of Edward's, is he was prone to falling under the influence of stronger men. And there were rumors that he and Hugh Despenser were lovers. They may have been. It's not conclusive. Historians are divided on that topic. So I left it an open question in the book. It's a rumor. But as Hugh Despenser gains more and more influence over Edward, he begins to exert his power and starts taking land and revenues from various nobles, and in fact, the Queen herself, Queen Isabella. So throughout most of the book, Isabella is a loyal and faithful wife to Edward, trying to be a good queen, trying to be her best. She comes to England as a young woman. Excuse me for just a moment. Sorry about that. She comes to England as a teenage girl who's full of romantic fantasies about what life is, because she was raised in a royal court herself, and read a great deal of the Arthurian romances and other romances of the day. So she begins the book an idealistic young woman full of dreams of chivalry and romance, and over time sees the ugly side of life. And by the time Hugh Despenser is exerting his influence over the king, she's become really his victim. Hugh Despenser is taking her lands away from her. He's taking her revenues away from her. And he's making himself the richest man in England. So, long story short, Isabella decides she will not be a victim of this. She will not be treated badly. She will not have her lands and revenues taken from her. And she will not suffer being under house arrest, which essentially she was. She manages to go to France on a diplomatic mission to, on Edward's behalf, to talk to her brother, King Charles. And while there, she decides that she's going to recruit an army and go back to England and take back what's hers. So there's, like I said, there's a lot that happens in the book. I think the best thing about it all is everything that I chronicle in this book actually happened. The battles, the political intrigues, the executions of people, Isabella's refusal to, like I said, be a victim, and her return with an army. There's even a dramatic jailbreak that happens. There's a character named Roger Mortimer, a man who really existed, who was imprisoned in the Tower of London. And throughout the entire existence of the Tower of London, which has been there close to 1,000 years now, there's only been two people who were held as prisoner who managed to escape. And Roger Mortimer was one of those people. It's all like something out of some sort of adventure book, but it actually happened.
So, what exactly that you want to say about through this book? Do you want people to know about what all she have gone through, or what's your motive to tell this story? Brain, I lost you. Your video is frozen. Yeah, we are connected.
Hi there.
Yeah, we are connected. So did you?
Apologies. My machine just died. So I apologize for that.
No problem. Did you hear my question, or do I need to repeat it?
It sounded like you were asking what I wanted to say in the book or with the book.
Yeah. Do you want to tell her story, or do you want to tell the world that what she all went through?
Um, you know, yes, I do want to tell Isabella's story. So that's a great question. Um, there's kind of a two-part answer. Um, my first goal in just writing the book, and like I said originally, my goal was I intended to write the book about Edward III, her son, but wound up writing this one instead. And originally, my goal was to just write an entertaining book about the Middle Ages in England, because people always say, "Oh, history's boring and history's dry," and it's not. History is full of rich and fascinating and entertaining stories. I've always said there's no such thing as boring history, but unfortunately, there's a lot of boring history teachers. So that was my goal, was to just to tell an entertaining story to show people how alive and rich this history is. Once I got into actually writing the book that focuses on Isabella, I became I really wanted to tell the story to dispel this bad reputation that she has. She's been known as the she-wolf of France for 400 years now. Um, that came about during when Christopher Marlowe, who was a contemporary of William Shakespeare, wrote a play, Edward II, and in it she's referred to as the she-wolf of France. And so lots and lots of people for the last 400 years think of her as a bad person. They think of her as somebody who invaded, her adopted homeland and was just this greedy, vicious person. And the research shows a completely different person. And when I say the research, I cite 9 different sources, novel or not novels, but history books and medieval chronicles, um, including some excellent biographies on Isabella and on Edward II and Edward III. And when you read the actual history, you see she's not a bad person. She just refused to be a victim. And now, of course, in the Middle Ages, if a woman refused to be a victim, she was often seen as a bad person. But I think through a modern lens and some better understanding of the actual events, you'll see that Isabella was not this she-wolf of France. She was actually just a woman who, refused to be the victim of a greedy person, a greedy man, and decided to take back what was hers.
So, have you done any research in order to tell this story? How much time you took the to write this book, and how many pages it is, and what all the words? How many the count of words that you used in order to explain this story?
So yeah, I'm holding up some of the books right now that I used. Uh, in fact, here's an excellent history by Alison Weir on Queen Isabella, and you can see all the notes and tabs and highlights. So I did a great deal of research on this, and I began writing the book. It took about a year to write, and I would say I did probably 4 months of just pure research before I began writing. And then the research continued as I moved forward in the writing, first with the outline and then with the actual writing of the book. So um, I guess you could say since the research was continual, I was constantly going back and looking up facts or reading ahead of where I was. I guess you could say it took a year to write, and it took about 16 months to do all the research in total. It's a long book, longer really than I realized or intended. It was my first novel, or it is my first novel. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what the word count is, but in the print edition that I'm holding here, it's about 720 pages. I hope that doesn't scare people away. it's but there's just so many things that happen in the book that I really hope that once people uh, check it out and start reading it, they'll get hooked and don't mind the fact that it's a long read.
Where people can get this book?
Well, it's going to be available starting June 30th of this year, so 2 months. It's available right now for pre-order on Amazon. So Amazon.com, you can search for The Queen Among Kings. It helps to include my name in that search, I've discovered. It will also be available on barnesandnoble.com and bookshop.org. People will also be able to buy it directly from my author website, which is just Brian Martin Author, and Brian is spelled with an I. I always have to note that because some people spell Brian with a Y. So they can go to brianmartinauthor.com and we'll be able to order the book there as well.
As a software guy, as a person who is into technology, and I'm a cloud DevOps engineer working for a London company right now. I did masters in software engineering, also bachelor's in computer science engineering. I'm curious to know, you know, you have been into 35 years into software industry, and now there is another person who came out, an author writing a book. So how do you define yourself as an author coming from software background? I mean, how that transformation happened, and there must be a very decent reason for you to, to do this, and it clearly says that you're very serious about it.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. First of all, when I say I worked in the software industry, I have to clarify that I was not a software engineer. In fact, I spent my entire time in the software industry being the least technically capable person in the room, wherever I was. I am not by nature a technical person. So I just kind of wound up in the software industry. There's not a lot for a person with a history degree to do professionally other than get more degrees and teach, or go to law school or something like that. Um, when I finished, my original goal was I was going to get my PhD and become a medieval history professor. That was my goal. What I discovered about myself is that I did not have the tenacity to spend that long in school. And also, I had a history professor, a medieval history professor at university, who I told her I wanted to be a medieval history professor, and she was like, "Well, be prepared to be in school for a long time and have to get published and probably still not be able to find a job because there aren't many of these jobs available." So anyway, I'd gotten out. I was going to spend some time just working and saving up some money, and I wound up working at a computer game company for a guy that I knew. He was an early pioneer of computer games, and this is back in 1990. And so I just kind of fell into that, and I never left the industry. So, like I said, I was not a programmer or software engineer. I started out on the creative side of computer games, writing conversations, writing quests, and things of that nature. I'm getting interrupted by everything possible. Um, and after a while, I moved into project management. So I spent most of my time in software industry, first at this computer game company, and then moving on to companies like Dell, Hewlett Packard, and SAP, working as a project manager and then with an engagement manager for software as a service projects and things like that. So that's what I did for most of my career. While it was a great career, and I was able to make money and support my family and do all those wonderful things, it was never really what I considered to be fulfilling as a person. Maybe that's part of the reason why I kept saying someday I'm going to write a book. So, like I said, when I retired, I wound up writing a book. And you asked how I identify myself. Um, I would say I would think of myself as a lover of history and a teller of stories.
So, what all skills that help you to present this story well?
Uh, that's What am I? Well, like I said, I consider myself kind of a storyteller. I like to sit around and tell stories. I've been told that I'm good at it and engaging. So I think that I have a decent command of the English language and words. Sometimes I'm a bit verbose, as you probably noticed. So I think just that my love of words and my storytelling ability is probably my strongest suits. Um, I think conversation writing is probably what I'm best at. Unfortunately, I'm not a visually oriented person. So when it comes to describing the grand events of things, that's where I'm a little weak. Um, and I'm working to get better at that. My wife is very visual, so I will oftentimes go to her and try to get her help with that, and then put it into words. Um, but yeah, I think my ability to tell stories and hopefully bring events to life would probably be my strong suits.
Why this story?
Well, like I said, I originally set out to write the book about Edward III, and the genesis of that was I had recently read a biography on Edward III called The Perfect King by an excellent historian named Ian Mortimer. And in it, he talks about how Edward seized the reins of power. He was 14 years old when he was made king. And for the first 3 years of his reign, Roger Mortimer and Isabella really were the powers behind the throne. And there was a dramatic event at Nottingham Castle late at night where Edward and about a dozen or so of his loyal young knights literally broke into Isabella's room and arrested Roger Mortimer, and he took the reins of power. It's again, it sounds like something from a play or a movie, but it really happened. And they sometimes call it the Nottingham coup. And I was telling that story to some friends over dinner, and afterwards, my wife said, when she was saying, "Why don't you write a book?" She was saying, you were telling that story, and Renee, our friend, was saying that it sounded. She was seeing it in her head while you were telling it. It sounded like a movie. She goes, "When are you going to write a book?" So I thought, well, yeah, I guess I'll write a book. And since that story seemed to entertain people, I'll write a book about Edward III. So that was how it all started.
So, what are the main things that people need to know, before reading this book?
Um, I don't think people really need to know anything about the period or the history or the events or anything like that. I think people just need to have an open mind when it comes to the subject, and knowing that history is not dry, it's not boring, and that historical fiction can really bring those events to life.
So, why history? What made you to draw your attention to history?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I just always, even as a child, I loved history. And honestly, it runs in my family. My father was a big history buff. Um, One of my uncles, who was also on my father's side, was a big history buff, and they would sit around and talk about the American Civil War or Texas history. The state of Texas has a lot of interesting history. And I guess I just inherited it from my father, and or just had a natural affection for history. But that was always English class and history classes. My entire time I was in school, from childhood through high school and into college, those were always my best subjects.
So, the queen among the kings, what it defines?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The queen among the kings, what it defines?
What does it defines? What does it define? Well, hmm, that's an interesting question. It's an interesting way of asking it. I don't know if it really defines anything. Maybe if it defines anything, it's that Isabella, like I was saying earlier, was not this evil queen. She was not this she-wolf of France. She was a woman born into royalty. Her father was the king of France. Her brother was the king of France after their father. She was intelligent, well-read, cultured, strong-willed woman who just would not accept being someone else's victim. So I think if there's anything to take away from it, other than just enjoying a good story and an entertaining story, it was that she's not the bad person she's been made to be.
So, you are saying that she is projected in a different way, her reputation or the way the world looks at her.
Yes. And even just recently, actually, in some Facebook comments, I had someone, an Englishman, it was a post I was trying to promote the book, and he commented and said, "Why would you want to write a book about an ungrateful queen who invades her adopted homeland and deposes the king and things. And so, even today, 400 years after Marlowe's play, there are still people who think of her as a villain. And I don't think she was a villain. I think that she was a good person who just um, refused to, fall victim to somebody who really was a villain, and that's Hugh Despenser.
So books are something which will be the historical record of humans,
Hmm.
right? So you are writing this book, and you're putting this in the social world, and it will impact, and it has an impact, and how it is going to be, and what impact it is going to then, or what kind of age people are going to get connected with this book.
Well, I would hope that the impact would be, first of all, that people just enjoy the story. Yeah, I'm not trying to make a social statement here. I'm not Steinbeck or Tolstoy or uh, one of those, groundbreaking, amazing titans of literature. I'm certainly not that one of those guys. So, first of all, I really just hope that people enjoy the story and want to read more. But I keep going back to changing people's perceptions of Isabella and also people's perceptions of history. If somebody can read this book and walk away going, wow, I thought she was the she wolf of France. Turns out she was actually not so bad. And or people walk away from it and think, I always thought of history was really boring, but golly, there's battles, there's political infighting, there's funny things that happen, there's uh, characters that they actually come to befriend and care about. So, if they can walk away thinking history was rich and full of great stories and not a boring subject, that would be very personally rewarding for me as somebody who's a lover of history.
Uh, you are an American, and you wanted to tell the story of a woman who belongs to uh, other country, and that
Hmm.
too the woman who was there 100 years ago. So what is that reason?
Um, Again, I don't know why, but I've always had, well, like I said, a love of history. But there are certain history is a huge subject, right? So there are that's why historians specialize, and so there are always parts of history that I've fallen into and studied deeply. In the Middle Ages, the High Middle Ages, I should say, kind of that period between the year 1000 to about 1600, I've studied a lot, and I have always had an affinity for the United Kingdom, for Britain. I don't know why. I was born and raised in Texas, but I've always just had a strong pull towards that area and its history and its people. I first traveled to the UK when I was 18. And I've been fortunate enough to visit there 6 or 7 times total. I even proposed to my wife in a castle in Wales. There's just always something about that land and its history that has always had a strong pull on me. So when it came time to write something, I wanted to center it there.
What kind of opinion people are going to have after reading this book?
What kind of what are they going to have?
What kind of an opinion that people are going to have after reading this book?
Um, well, opinion about what specifically?
I mean, after reading this story, what kind of an opinion that they are going to have about her or her story?
Uh, well, hopefully they'll come away admiring Isabella instead of thinking she is a villain. Hopefully they'll come away maybe even inspired a little bit to go, you know what, I can, stand up for myself like she did. Um, because I mean, it's, I think, I hope, fairly commonplace now. If women feel more comfortable being able to stand up for themselves and their rights and so forth, but it certainly wasn't the case 700 years ago. So hopefully they'll have a good opinion of Isabella and walk away with maybe some sense of empowerment or something.
So when you came up with the idea to write the book about her and naming Queen among the kings, people around you, or when you expressed this interest to someone who are close to you or anyone, what was the reaction?
Well, all my friends, I think, were not at all surprised. Um, they all knew my involvement and love of history and telling stories, and I got a great deal of support from my friends. They were all like, "Yeah, I can't wait for you to finish it. I want to read it." So that has been a great reaction. Um, so I don't think anybody's been too surprised. If anything, I think a lot of my friends and family were like, "It's about time."
Uh, After completion of writing this book, what's your feelings
Well, about the book itself, or about the process of writing, or
about the book itself?
well, I'm happy with it. I think as happy as a person can be about something they create. um, One thing I've noticed about every creative person I've ever known is that they are never satisfied with what they do. My wife is an amazing seamstress. Professionally, she's a teacher, but she makes theatrical costumes for productions here in town. And she's just amazing. The things that she makes are just remarkable. But she can look at a dress or a costume that she makes and point out every single flaw that's in it that nobody else sees. So I'm kind of the same way. Speaking of history and telling stories, um, and artists never being satisfied. Um, if you read Michelangelo's letters to his father while he was painting the Sistine Chapel, he goes on and on about how he's not satisfied with it. It's not looking the way he wants it to look. So the man, the man created what could arguably the greatest work of art in the Western world, and he wasn't happy with it. So um, I'm happy with the book. There are still things that if I could probably go back and make several more editing passes to try to refine some things, or cut down some conversations, or maybe take some parts out. But there comes a time when you have to say stop and say it's done. Um, I guess I would say overall I'm happy, and I'm actually looking forward to. I'm actually begun writing my next book, and I'm hoping that I can apply the lessons I've learned from the first one into the second one.
So, how the narration will be in your perspective, or uh, the the person who is, the hero of the story, in her perspective, this is being expressed, or how it is narrated?
How is it narrated? Was that the
Yeah,
question?
exactly, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
how? Is it
Um,
Brain the person who is telling about her story, or
um, it's there's just a third person narration voice that moves things along in between, events. If anybody's read Colleen McCullough or Ken Follett or any of those other historical fictions, or George MacDonald. Well, no, not George MacDonald Fraser. Sorry, his character narrates things. It's just a third party narrator, just the voice of the narrator that moves things along. Um, and those two authors I just mentioned are two amazing historical fiction authors. Colleen McCullough, she's most famous for her novel *The Thornbirds*, but she wrote a series based in ancient Rome. The first of which is called *The First Man in Rome*, and Ken Follett is most famous for his book *The Pillars of the Earth*, which is set in the Middle Ages. Great book. They're tremendous authors.
at last, what do you say about Queen Among the Kings to my audience or my listeners who are watching and listening this conversation from anywhere on this planet?
What I had to say about the book, um, I'd say give it a chance. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll find it entertaining. I think you'll learn some things, which is another thing I really love about historical fiction. It's well researched, meticulously researched, I should say. Like I said, I held up some of the books. I've got them all right here next to me. Um, I think it's an entertaining story that brings a period of history that's not known to a lot of people to life, and sheds light on a woman who I think has been undeservedly painted as a villain, and sets up the story for the next book, which leads into the reign of King Edward III, that covers the Hundred Years' War and the creation of the Order of the Garter and all kinds of other interesting and fun historical events.
Last, can you mention where they can able to get this book online, or
Can I
where they
mention
can
what?
able to get where they can able to
Uh,
get this book?
they'll be able to get it at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Bookshop.org, and BrianMartinAuthor.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Brian Martin Author on Facebook, or Brian Writes Books on Instagram. I've been just beginning to post some promotional posts that are introducing some of the characters in the book. Isabella, Edward II, young Edward, who goes on to become Edward III, and so forth. Like I said, I think it's an entertaining book and maybe even a little bit educational, and I think people will enjoy it.
Then also, I'll put all the your words already reached to my audience and shared you. At last, as an historical fiction author, and also a person who is into software industry for 35 years, what's your observation about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I'm sorry, you cut out there at the end. What was that last part?
Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
As an historical fiction author, and also as a person who is into software industry for 35 plus years,
Yeah.
what's your observation about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I my Have I seen any of your interviews?
Yeah, my.
Yes,
Have you seen
yes,
any
I have.
videos?
Yes, in fact, just yesterday I was listening to your podcast with a gentleman who works in the aerospace industry, who's uh, I believe he's a flight controller at NASA, and he was talking about the future in space and the establishment, the goal of establishing a moon base and putting data centers in orbit and things like that. That's something else. I'm by no means an expert on that, but I'm fascinated with space and the future of space and space travel. So I found it to be a really interesting interview, and he talked about stuff I've never heard of. So that was really not only entertaining to listen to, but also educational as well.
So my profession is a software profession. Apart from that, I'm interviewing experts like you from all over the world for working in different industries and for working uh, in different things who are business owners, leaders, CEOs, founders, uh, all kind of people. More than 100 country experts I have interviewed for my podcast in last 5 years. More than 860 interviews I have done in last 5 years. So having this kind of conversations with different kind of experts who are coming from different backgrounds, doing different things, new interviewing them and having conversation and putting it in public. So this is going to be helpful for me uh, in my career or in my future.
Um, well, I was surprised when you reached out to me, because when I looked at the people you've been interviewing, they were business people and tech people, and I didn't see a lot of authors in there. So, I was deeply honored that you reached out to me and wanted to talk to me. So if I've been able to help broaden your topics and subjects that you talk about, uh, I think that's amazing. And I also really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Can I put this podcast on my, I mean, this conversation on my podcast with your permission?
I'm sorry.
Can I put this clip on my podcast with your permission?
Absolutely. Yes, please.
But, thank you very much again, Rain, for giving me opportunity to present your work and letting my audience know about the motivation behind writing the Queen Among the Kings, and also telling about uh, why you want to write it and the story behind it.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience, and I hope some folks check out the book and enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Ben, again. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good one.